Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. As always, I'm here with my good friend Andy. Thanks for joining us as we continue his first time reading of Worm. Andrew, what's new? How you been?
I've been pretty good. My lovely wife was talking to some folks and happened to mention that I was doing this podcast. And so she shared out the information on it and everything. And based on, the content of the book, as much as I love it, I don't think these other folks are maybe quite as into it. So I might have fewer social contacts in the area in the coming weeks. But anyway,
Well, at least you tried.
that's true, right? We need to expose ourselves to art, whether it's stuff that we like or not.
There you go.
It's all creative. So today we will be reviewing Arc 26, Sting, chapters 1 through 3, and the first interlude. And as far as new business, we have one question.
Yes, that's true. I wasn't planning on doing questions and comments this week, but this one from Megafire 7 is so timely, I thought that we should address it and give you a chance to respond. So, from our longtime contributor, Megafire 7, just to be clear, the Cauldron member helping the number man out in his interlude was the custodian and not Contessa. Those are not the same person, although I can see where the confusion came from. And just to interject a little bit, I'm not sure, at least I didn't take away there was any confusion about those two. But anyway, hold your thought on that, Andy, and you can address that when we get to the end here. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. And to continue from Megafire. And then there's Bonesaw's interlude. What an absolute treat to see this horrifically traumatized and traumatizing, let's not forget, find some semblance of humanity buried deep inside of her, knowing she will have to plunge it back into a sea of monstrousness. Monstrousness. Oh, gosh.
There you go.
All right. Thanks for that. Question for you, Andy, is from Megafire is, do you think Bonesaw will be redeemed insofar as that term means anything? Do you see that kind of future for any of the other villains / monsters we've come to know so far? What do you have to say on that?
Well, I think the possibility's there. I could envision something like kind of Gollum at the end of The Lord of the Rings, where Bonesaw somehow self-sacrifices or sabotage her own creations in some way, put some kind of thing in there, and that just the same way she protected everything, there's some kind of thing that'll disable them or something, but it will cause her grievous harm to be able to activate. So I could see something like that maybe happening. If that spark is still there. I could also see it going the other way, though, where she kind of uncovered, oh, I'm not totally just a mayhem robot. I do have this spark of humanity left. And then going ahead with what's going on with Slaughterhouse Night and just her self-loathing getting so bad that she just totally goes off the deep end and just,
completely suppresses it.
Yeah. And kind of like going way back, Elric in the stories by Michael Moorcock, where the sword just drinks souls and it takes over and he kills friend and foe alike, and the field is just everybody's dead but him at the end. So I could see something like it could go either way. It's on a knife's edge right now, I think.
Any other villains that we've met that you think might fall into this category to kind of lend a little more substance to Megafire's question?
Well, I've always wondered about Mannequin. And I guess I see where he's coming from more than most, that he had these plans. He could have done something well. He didn't get the backup he needed. Horrible things happened personally to him, and he's sealed himself off. But I guess I could see him maybe doing something. But no, I think, and the clones are a bit of a wild card. They're not perfect replicas. So it's hard to know which way they would go and how the passengers fit into it. And if they wire in and it's not a perfect match, does stuff shorten out in there, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, and wires are crossed. Wow, mixing all sorts of electrical metaphors in here. But yeah, all of a sudden, instead of, oh, this is my power, this use it, all of a sudden they use it a different way, or something else happens and they just go rogue kind of. So
Okay.
there's, yeah, I feel like juggling chainsaws right now. There's so much flying around. It's hard to know what's going to happen.
Oh, you don't know the half of it. But then again, that's why we're here discussing this thing every couple of weeks, so we can see what gingerbread house is at the end of this trail.
There you go.
Thanks, Megafire. As I said, this was a good question. It was timely, and I thought we should address it today. And so we will begin our review of Sting, Chapter 1. And Weaver and her team are out at the town of Killington. I believe the sign says, yeah, welcome to Killington, heart of the Green Mountains. And I'm sure on any other occasion, it would be a beautifully idyllic and green little town hidden away. But that's not the case today, is it, Andy?
No, leave it to Worm and the author to come up with a little bit of not so veiled pun here, Killington.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I
just
especially
how
like the
that's just how Wildbow rolls, man.
exactly, yeah, the bloody handprint right in the middle of the word heart. Uh, but
could
yeah,
he
this
be
is
more obvious? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
right.
you off.
Well, and it he sets the tone on the first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
that all these things are gruesome, right? But
Yeah.
something's bad when your dog is just like making those weird noises. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like this ain't right. I don't know what's wrong, but
Yeah.
I just no, this I don't even want to be here right now.
Correct. And Rachel's dogs, they've been through some stuff. So if this is making them go, then yeah,
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
is not going to be a good deal. So as I said, Weaver and the Undersiders and some members of the Protectorate era in this town. This is the first site where the Slaughterhouse Nine makes their appearance. And I think I can let you in on the fact that, yeah, okay, because of the number of clones, the fandom calls this particular segment the Slaughterhouse 9000 arc because there's just
Mm,
so many of them. So
sure.
that's just kind of a little fun little tidbit for you to gnaw on. But anyway,
Okay.
there's bodies all over the place in various states of dismemberment and damage, corpses all over, and Jack's sending a message. Weaver and her team, as they make a slow but steady entree toward the center of town, they come across all kinds of gruesome things. Weaver quickly discerns that Jack is leaving them a message, and this display of bodies actually is in kind of a pinwheel formation, a spiral heading toward a location near the center of town, sending a message.
Yeah, it's almost like some kind of artistic composition in a super creepy, disgusting way.
How many times has Jack and Bonesaw talked about creating their art?
Exactly. Yeah. And now they have the whole town is their palette,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got all sorts of minions that they can set free on there. So it's this whole group effort, and people have really gone to town. And everybody's numbered, right? Because
Yes.
at back in the beginning of this whole underlying storyline, Theo was told 1,000 people would die if he made the deal, if he couldn't stop Jack. And so these are the first of the 1,000. And They're grouped in different ways. Some are burned so that all that's left is a scrap of skin with the number on it.
Mm-hmm.
You got the 9 girls with crowns of thorns, and then with one of them perched up on a lamppost, and it's all signifying something. Everybody's trying to get a message, just like when you look at one of those weird paintings from different eras when it's all these different all this symbolism in there, and you're trying to figure out, all right, did that thing over there mean something, or is it just it's just a tree limb sticking out of somebody's head? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that meant the tree of knowledge or what, but it might. Who knows?
And Wildbow takes us on this horrific journey toward the center of town and gets us to ask those questions. What message is Jack trying to send to Theo, to the heroes? Obviously, let's see here how to put this. Jack doesn't know. We find out that Jack doesn't know, obviously, that the heroes are helping Theo. I'm going to presume that the idea was, hey, we're going to do all this. We're going to create all this carnage. The heroes are going to play this tape and then go get Theo. And Tattletale actually kind of spelled that out for us as once she came on to the phone line and was joining in on the conversation. So moving a little bit further here, I want to point out, yeah, it's the Red Hands and the Undersiders are with Weaver, and Chevalier and his team is in another section of the town doing the same thing, trying to follow the clues and working their way in toward the center of town. So we meet, well, not meet, but we do get some of these different members of the Slaughterhouse Nine that you haven't come up against before. Pretty gruesome group all the way around.
Yeah. There's the breed, especially,
Whoa, that's just
was
so
pretty
wrong.
bad. And I love the way Wildbow writes how that pushes a lot of folks kind of over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And Weaver is just trying to make sure her team is solid, but the Red Hands kind of take exception to it.
Oh,
And
let me interrupt you there because I didn't want to forget
sure,
this. The point that Weaver made about, or the observation she made about how the Undersiders might have become the Red Hand had she not come into their lives, possibly if had Coil not pushed them a certain way. Interesting comparison. Fair.
yeah, and I think there's a lot of that kind of juxtaposition in this arc where we've kind of got, this is how it is, but it could have been like this,
Mm.
or this is how it was, but now it's changed and it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I liked Weaver contemplating that, and that
Mm.
they might have just become, with a bigger and bigger scoring thievery group, and not really gotten into hitting people at all or fighting, or let alone going up against the Slaughterhouse Nine. And so it's, and the thing though that I keep running through the back of my head is,
Mm-hmm.
are these thoughts that she's having? Are these thoughts that are like leakage from the passenger? Or are these thoughts
Oh.
that one of the clones is somehow just sowing a little bit of lack of confidence or questioning, or who knows? I mean, there's just traps everywhere. The first thing that happened got triggered with a helicopter coming in to
Mm-hmm.
try to check it out, and the Slaughterhouse Nine was like, "No, you're not going to be able to do that. You got to walk through it. So anything you fly in, we're just going to blow that stuff up." So that's why they're all on the ground. But yeah, I think there's a lot of this kind of, could have gone this way, could have gone that way, or I thought it was going this way, but it's going to go this other way.
I'm interrupted you earlier. You were just going to discuss the different members that you were being introduced to. Did you want to continue that train of thought? Do you have anything to add on that?
Sure, yeah, Breed was the one that
Mm-hmm.
creeped me out the most, and especially, I mean, it was bad enough just thinking that it's these things that burrow in, or just sneak in and then get fat and come back out again, but
Ugh.
they get to the size of people or even bigger, and then they get weaponized. It's just like, what? And so when you said Slaughterhouse 9000, I thought, well, there's nine of these breeds, and they think they can do a certain number of these little guys every day, or these little
Hmm.
slugs or whatever. That could end up being a pretty big pile of that
Of
could add to the
awfulness.
numbers
Yeah.
pretty
Hmm.
quickly. And then, you think, oh, well, they're bugs. Maybe Weaver's got a shot. No, no, sorry. Too easy.
And it would have been too easy had she been able to control them. And so, yeah, I'm glad Wildbow made that the case where she could not. It added to the terrifying nature of these creatures. So, what do you think of Nice Guy? Another
Oh man,
terrifying
yeah.
stranger that we get to meet and hang out with.
Yeah. And thank goodness Weaver talks about it a little bit later, but that she's really been trying to plan this out for the last 2 years. Ever since Dinah told her that the world was going to end, it was probably going to be Jack Slash and his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
She's been trying to figure out, well, what would I need to do in these encounters? How would I need to try to be prepared? And so she is setting up codes and setting up communication
Yes,
plans, trying to
right.
have people off site, trying to keep the super strong people away so that if somebody like Eidolon or whoever Chevalier were to get taken over or be tricked in some way, they wouldn't be able to stop them. And
Yeah.
then instead of fighting the Slaughterhouse Nine, you're fighting one of your own trusted allies. So she's got a lot of this stuff going on and planned out. And thank goodness, because yeah, Nice Guy is getting them all pointing their guns at each other practically, like,
Wow.
oh, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, my first read, there was a whole lot of what happened here? What am I missing? And Imp slices this guy's throat. Thank goodness. I loved. I mean, the writing was exquisite here because you have Revel on the phone going, "Oh my God, I'm dying here." Skitter or Weaver, turn to your right. Shoot that person. No, 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 not Gollum. And there is a very you feel the tension. It's really you're scared that somebody is going to get hurt by their own teammate until
It
Imp comes along and does what she needs to do.
Yeah, it really reminded me of the red mist
Mm-hmm.
that got turned loose in Brockton Bay when people weren't sure who was who, and the Slaughterhouse Nine was deceiving people. And but thank goodness that Weaver, like I said, had kind of laid the groundwork on how to deal with this kind of situation. She's even said, I read the file. Everybody's
Yeah.
like, how did you know this was going to happen? It's like, it's all there. It's like, oh, sorry, I was trying to live my life and train rather than reading stuff that turned my brain into a quivering worm of fear. So yeah, I didn't quite get into the files the way you did there, Weaver. But thanks for doing that. I'm glad you did.
She makes the observation that Imp has gotten more powerful
Yeah,
because she can talk when she's using her ability. Nice little improvement, nice little thing for Wildbow to show us that it's not just Taylor, Weaver, Skitter over the course of her career getting stronger, that others would obviously as well.
yeah, and it totally makes sense. I mean, Imp went rogue there for a while and got down and dirty, took care of some serious business with a lot of
Mm,
folks, including Regent's dad. And so I'm sure she had to push herself and push her power the same way Skitter was doing back in the day. I just need a little bit further. I need a little bit more reach with my bugs, and just like any muscle, I guess, it
sure.
gets stronger with use. But yeah, that's pretty impressive. That Wait, who said that? She's
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as
and then
we're go
she
ahead,
gets
bud.
mad. She gets mad at Nice Guy for using her shtick.
Yeah.
It's so.
Yeah. Who do you think you are? That's my game. But anyway, so we're moving further down into the chapter, and the red hands are a little iffy.
Yeah,
Weaver gets a little short with them. Like, look, if you don't want to be here, you don't got to be here. Oh my gosh, who's the leader of the Red Hands? She's not a fan of Weaver. Um,
Chosen?
yes, thank you. She's not a fan of Weaver. Is it because of the old relationship with Gru? Is it just because she don't know her? We're not really privy to that. I think we're left to draw our own conclusions, but it doesn't really matter. I didn't think. Did you have anything to add on that to
No,
expound on?
I like I said, Weaver's been planning this for 2 years, and
Mm-hmm.
she knows the people she can count on, but she's got all these new folks to integrate. And it's like, all right, you're kind of messing with the plans here. I didn't count on anybody tossing their cookies as part of the entrance into this scene. So if you can't handle it, that's fine. I didn't count on you being here in the first place. I'm not going to miss you if you're gone. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
But of course, because of that relationship, there is a little bit of uh, personal feeling around it. Whether it's really legit or not. I didn't get the sense that it was, but then there's the scene where Gru and Weaver wrap up the conversation
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, at the same words, thank you. And then she turns away and has to kind of smile so that, yeah, we're on
that
the same page. I don't know about all y'all, but
yeah, that was a nice moment. It was. It was. I did not want to forget Rebel's heavy sigh of irritation when Tattletale Weaver's like, "Yeah, Tattletale, just give me a call on my phone." And Rebel starts to read her the phone number, and next thing you know, of course, Tattletale has it memorized or can figure it out. Get out of town! What are you kidding me?
yeah, the phone rings before the numbers totally
And
divulged.
Rebel just does a heavy sigh, like, "Oh God, okay." But of course, you want Tattletale read in on a situation. She's one of the big brains in the operation. And she tells Weaver there's no harm in playing the tape that was there. Yeah, in a VCR, I guess. And so they play this tape, and that's a message from Jack setting this whole thing in motion. He's laying down the rules, what's going on, what's going to happen here. At first, he kind of pokes fun at Theo, and then, of course, kind of a psych move, and then he puts down the parameters for how this is going to play out. Pretty depressing.
The only hopeful thing in it was that he did say, he did give him a little bit of an extension. He realized that the game got started later than Jack expected, so he gave Gollum a pass for being quote unquote late.
Mm-hmm.
But he only has 5 days, and they're saying that they're restricting if there could be any help or anything. And I think Weaver does a great job, and as I touched on, she's considering this a Seaberg situation.
Very wise. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you don't know who might be flipped or impersonated or whatever. And so, you got to make sure all the super heavy hitters are standing out of the direct fray, which is a little counterintuitive, but you can't risk it.
Agreed. What did you think of this situation, the conversation between Weaver and Chevalier when she was, and I want to read this. I wonder if it's kind of an echo of the Skitter Coil relationship. Let me read this one section here. This is when Weaver's trying to convince Chevalier which teams to send with her onto the next site. It says, "Work with me here. And if we're all standing at the end, I'm yours. Whatever you want to use me for, however, it doesn't matter. If this blows over and the end of the world doesn't happen, like some think it won't, then the deal stands." Sound vaguely familiar?
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's another one of those things where Wildbow is kind of drawing those parallels. And this is a standard Weaver tactic. It's she knows when folks aren't going to be necessarily on her side or bought into her plans,
Mm-hmm.
but she's willing to kind of horse trade a little bit, say, all right, well, you do this, I'll do that. And you wonder when the other shoe's going to fall. But, as we'll find out later, I think there's a pretty good bet because the chance of it their chance of success is like a little over 6%. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, oh well, I'll do anything you want if we win. Well, the chance of you winning is like pretty low. So sucker bet.
It would appear at this moment in time.
Right.
Let's talk about Gollum mourning for these folks, these victims of this situation. I didn't get the impression that he was going to run initially, as Weaver was kind of asking him. But I certainly appreciate Wildbow giving us that look from him, from inside Theo's point of view. Look, somebody needs to mourn for these people, and I need a few minutes here to kind of wrap my mind around all this stuff. You've been preparing for this. You are actually Jack's nemesis. I need to get my mind right. I thought that was an appropriate look.
Definitely. Yeah. It's easy to get jaded, and just all these non-parahumans or even the folks that aren't top tier or undersider or close allies, they're all just kind of chips on the board or pieces on the chessboard. And the red hands in their way kind of showed that, all right, no, these are still people. They were living their lives. They were in this nice little town doing their thing, raising kids, getting married, whatever. And now they're all these weird, disgusting art projects, and their lives are just ended in an instant just for fun for these people. And for Gollum, not only is it disgusting and tragic, but it's personal because he
Mm-hmm.
made this deal. Um, but and it's not that Weaver is immune to feeling for people who are dying, but it's just that she's learned that she has to push through that and focus more on, well, yeah, some people are dying, but at least not the whole world's dying right now. So I got to keep that from happening.
Right. Yeah, she's looking further afield, and Theo acknowledges that, and he's like, "Look, um, you need to go prepare, be the brain, be the field general for us, and let me do this. Let me tend to these people in my own way while you prepare us for the next step." These two, I'm liking the relationship between these two.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised with Gollum as well. Yeah, I really didn't know what to make of him when he came on the scene way back
Mm-hmm.
when the deal was made, and he was a few years younger and hadn't even triggered yet.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting how he's developed. I mean, what a huge weight to bear and have to deal with. And yeah, he's dealing with it a different way, but
Mm-hmm.
it almost provides a balance. You need to have the big picture in mind, but that doesn't mean the small picture doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Some people need to take care of the small picture too.
Yeah. Good comparison between these two characters. And so we'll move on into chapter 2. Skitter's up on the porch of a nice little cabin in the woods outside of Killington, and the town is being razed to the ground. It's being burned, destroyed. It's the only way that that the authorities, the protectorate and co, that they can assure that the Nine's traps and breed minions and anything else, is destroyed. They have to take out the city.
Yeah, and it makes sense. They're also waging a war of trying to lock down the information, right? They
Yes.
can't they can't let things get out either. And if any evidence was left behind, then somebody who hadn't heard about it and decided months or years ago, hey, I'm going to Killington
Mm-hmm.
around this time of the year, they just show up and take pictures and it gets on the internet. And then, all of a sudden the nine are alerted or the 9,000. So they've got to make sure this is, yeah, quarantined and locked down just so that nobody's tipped off on the other side.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate the the quarantine measures. My first read, the importance of keeping this on the down low, so to speak.
Mm.
I get it now, but yeah, I didn't appreciate it back then. And even this time through, when we get skipping a little bit ahead, we get to the next chapter where she's talking to Idola, and we can go into detail then. That's kind of when some of the light bulbs began to go on for me then.
Mm.
But anyway, she's on the porch and she's talking with Defiant, and these two have, again, another sign that their relationship has really gotten stronger. I forget how you phrased it last time. I asked you about them being a mentor and a mentee, and you thought more along the lines of, what was it, kind of equal, not equals, partners was more accurate.
Yeah, yeah, they're kind of maybe two sides of the same coin, allies,
Mm-hmm.
and and they've kind of come at it from opposite ends of the spectrum. Weaver wanted to be a hero, was a villain for a while, and then is now back on the good side of things. Defiant started out as a hero with way too arrogant of a nature, and ended up getting slapped down pretty hard for it. And now is, even though he's less human on the outside, he seems more human on the inside. So, but yeah, they're an interesting comparison. But they're not. It's just one of those things where they acknowledge where their relationship begins and ends, and they're fine with that. It's not like
Yeah.
they're calling each other up during the night. Hey, did you watch that latest episode? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like they show up, they give each other the download, they brainstorm a little bit, and they're like, "Yeah, later, gotta go," and then that's it.
And it
Uh,
works for them. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. To the point where prior to them leaving and heading off, Defiant's like, hey, you know, something's going to go wrong. You're going to make a mistake, but that's because nobody's perfect. You do the best you can, and you rebound from it. And that was kind of another good example of where those two are now.
Right.
He makes her acknowledge that things don't always go right, and that you pick up the pieces and you keep moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. And when they're talking about the percentages,
Oh,
he kind of digs on her that, yeah, if we hadn't let them escape Brockton Bay, then we'd be in a lot better shape. But then he turns around and says, "Oh well, yeah, Dragon and I had a chance too, and we didn't get him either." So the numbers have crept up quite a bit. Like I said, there's just over 6% chance of success now.
and once again, we get Weaver asking well, if we took out everybody in the eastern seaboard of the United States, what does that do for the numbers? And it seems like Defiance actually asked Dinah the question to
Sure.
after a fashion.
I
Great
mean,
minds think alike.
well, yeah, it's like a patient with gangrene. It's like, can we
Yeah.
save them if we cut off the arm? Nobody wants that, but if it's a life or death situation, which is what they're talking about here, then you have to do it. And so it's a horrible thing to contemplate. But yeah, they're both thinking about, well, if there was some way we could summon an Endbringer and
Jeez. Oh, let's see. I think this is where we get introduced to the dragon's teeth as
yeah,
the squads are getting ready to divvy up and head to their two different locations, because at this moment Jack has split he's upped the ante. He's sent two hit squads out of the S9000, one in one location, the other in another location, and the teams are splitting up and getting ready to head out. And so this is where we're introduced to the dragon's teeth. You want to expound on those cool sounding guys?
well, as I went through this, I'm a big fan. It's one of the reasons I liked Iron Man so much. It's just he's just a regular big brain nerd engineer guy who amps himself up to be able to hang with superheroes and villains through the things that he builds. And so They've got this armor that's very similar in some ways to Defiance,
Hmm.
and they're a little. I thought the third eye camera thing was a little. Um, I've always liked more of the way the Sentinels looked in the Matrix with like 1,000 eyes kind of thing.
Oh,
Um,
nah, no
so I
way. That's
I
gross.
so I I think that would be cool. So the one eye in the middle that's got blue tinge to it, I'm kind of like, nah. What if you need to see other spectrums? What if you need to, have slow mo, whatever. I
Sure.
overthinking it as I usually do. But yeah, they're pretty cool, and they're there hanging out, ready to jump into the fray as well.
And Weaver talks about the quote unquote big guns who were there as part of their efforts. Norwal, we haven't seen Norwal since the Endbringer fight, since Leviathan. So she's
Right.
there. And this Weaver talks about Masamune. He's a survivor from Japan from when Leviathan sunk half the island. And I guess he's helping maintain and mass produce some of the Tinker tech that they need to outfit the Dragon's Teeth, which is awesome. So it's all hands on deck. Oh yeah, the Thonda. I think. Let me see here. Yeah, the Thonda are there, and at one point, I don't know if it's this chapter or previous one, they talked about, boy, it would be great if we can, once we get a beat on Jack, if we could have the Thonda call down a meteor strike on him.
Yeah, actually, it says the Thondo weren't there.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, 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 okay,
Dragon had tried to get in touch with them along with other groups, but they hadn't shown up. And again, we see Weaver talking about there's too many variables. The Endbringer attacks have ramped up, and so people are still on the sidelines a little bit from being in the midst of those things, or they're trying to get ready for the next one. And so it's not an all hands on deck. There's some people that are kind of sitting it out.
yeah. The Endbringers are attacking every 2 months, which is just
Oh
holy
my gosh.
crap, man. I mean, this planet, boy.
Yeah, I was have they set up a moon base yet? Can I get a ticket?
When's the next shuttle leaving from Cape Canaveral and yeah, pack a bag and
Exactly.
be on the way. Yes. So as we're moving further into the chapter, that's when Weaver and her team head out. Gollum is doing a little bit better. They do face off. Oh yeah. Okay, I might be mixing up a little bit here. Gollum goes with the other team. He doesn't go with Weaver and her squad, but he begins engaging in that location as Weaver and her team are heading out on her Dragonfly. She has a moment to kind of reflect and try to engage her passenger, almost prayer like. Yeah, because Chevalier had, as part of his parting thoughts to the teams, like, hey, now might be a time to, if you believe, ask in a higher power of some sort, maybe ask for a little help. And this is Weaver's effort at that, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah. He says, yeah, activate whatever powers you can or try to tap into that. And
Mm-hmm.
it would be scary to think of Weaver's capability if she had like direct interface, conscious interface with the passenger. But she's just trying to reach out for something. And she really needs, they all need whatever extra help they can get. Because the challenge has been thrown down and now they're stepping into the gauntlet. So
Okay, let's see here. Where's the location that they're? Oh, Schenectady. They get to Schenectady and they're dealing with some new S9000 members, Winter and Screamer and Crimson. More awful and surprisingly powerful capes. Former members of the Nine. This Screamer person, she could really mess with people's heads early on, as from a distance, mimicking their voice, beginning to get them to kind of question their sanity a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And Cherish is there too, I think.
Yes.
And so you've kind of got a double whammy where the I lost the name now. Screamer
Screamer. Yeah.
has the ability, kind of like Tattletale, to figure out things about people or get around them. And then she's got this sound manipulation, so she can actually mute people as well. She
Yeah.
can send out a sound that cancels out a person's voice once she's got it dialed in. Yeah, it's kind of like Nice Guy, but even worse. Nicer guy. I don't know.
We get another look at their stranger protocols for
Mm.
their communication passwords. Very clever, Weaver. Good job. Serious upgrade from the simple color coded one they color code an initial that the Undersiders used to use back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, and they had to, right? Because there's a
Yeah.
chance that could have been figured out already. So they needed a new way to do that. But Screamer has really got a great handle on the power that they
Mm-hmm.
have, in that she's giving them information that would make sense to be shared during this thing, that she's already, you know, they want a head count
Mm-hmm.
confirmation. And it's like, we didn't send out a head count. We don't even know yet. So somebody's, Screamer must be sending out false information here, false flags. So, if they're not using the codes, don't listen to it.
Right. Yeah. Good psychological warfare from Screamer and Cheris being used against the team as they go into battle. Hang on. Let's see here. Join Gollum. Okay. See, there's just so much flying around, going on here. Gollum was with
Yeah.
them. Okay. It was Gollum, the Undersiders, and some of the Red Hands. Was who in this group?
No, the Chicago
The
wards.
Wards. Okay. All right. And yeah, because yeah, Gollum and Weaver were exchanging passwords as they went into battle here. And then yeah, hey, uh Gollum's actually pretty decent combatant.
Yeah, I'd say so. This is a weird setup, though. They've got this whole uh Winter has got a tricky power, with
Mm-hmm.
this being able to, it's almost like entropy, that, like, it sounds
Yes.
like your atoms are slowing down, kind of, and you just stand there and freeze.
Yeah, because on the surface, okay, so this person produces cold, which could be okay, great. It could be scary if you're not careful, but entropy, if if you're just put into a stupor to where your brain cells are just not even firing, and you just stand there dumbfounded.
Yeah, yeah, it's so sneaky.
Yeah,
There's you wouldn't even know that you would be able to see it coming. It would just go under your radar. But yeah, getting to what you were saying about Gollum, I really love the how they've set up his suit, and so he's got stuff at hand,
yeah,
and no pun intended.
yeah,
And
yeah. No,
there,
that was a good, and we talked about it last episode. That was definitely a Weaver feel. The plates of different materials and stuff being ready for him to access to begin creating his hands or whatever from pavement or concrete or steel or whatever, and he puts it to good use. I guess at one point he uses a combination that Campanile had recommended to good effect. After a bit of a battle, they end up coming up out on top in this situation. Thank goodness.
yeah, and I think they had a great point here. Thank goodness they didn't have a teleporter,
Mm,
because that would have messed with a lot of stuff. But this Crimson person is pretty heavy duty too.
yeah,
They're climbing around out there, and they're ready to take the attack. But yeah, Gollum is using his abilities to not only try to get things, but also to, like, sabotage or booby trap the path that Crimson's trying to take. So
yeah. Grabbing legs when he was coming up the side of a building or whatever, and double hand strikes on them, and yeah, good job, Gollum. Much improvement, and he understands, as we said, he understands what's at stake, and so he's there's no holding back from him. Let's see here. Yeah, they win. Weaver's squad pulls it off, but word gets out to Jack, and so yeah, things are going to go to a new level. Now we're moving on into chapter 3. Weaver and her hit squad are moving on to the next location. Boy, okay. So this apartment complex or whatever that they had set up. Did you get how that was how the S9 members had it all set up and sabotaged? Did you catch that? Did it make sense to you?
Not at first, no. It was kind of tricky,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes sense. They've got people on their team that are like big brain environmental people, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they factored this in, and Tattletale touched on it earlier too, how each thing would be a little harder. There'd be trade-offs, there'd be curveballs and stuff. And so yeah, you've got this weird like shell that wraps around a bad layer that wraps around the real goal on the inside. And so they've got to come up with a way to try to get where they need to go without uh, just freezing everything.
We're touching on the combat because there's a lot of it, but I do want to pull back to the conversations, the personal interactions. We have those moments between Weaver and Gollum. Were there any other personal interplays that you wanted to touch on? I just want to make sure we didn't blow past anything because the combat has been so intense.
Um, not that not that I can think of. Yeah, I mean,
Or Rachel or anything else? I mean, if not, I'm just kind of a second look before we continued on.
there was the one interaction in the first chapter where Weaver was trying to be really careful and trying to explain that, and Rachel was being Rachel and like, well, let's just charge in there, and Imp and Gru were kind of like, let's be careful. You don't want to just have your dogs blown up or whatever. And she's like, no.
Yeah.
But, it's hard for somebody like Rachel who just wants to be given an order and, execute it
Yeah.
to kind of sit back and just wait and wants to be active and can't be active. So that was one interaction I think that was kind of interesting.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. I bring that up because we are going to go into before the combat commences here, we get Clockblocker and Vista and Crucible and Weaver and the Undersiders giving some verbal jousting back and forth.
mm,
Anything stand out to you here? I mean, of course, Imp is being Imp and giving as good as she gets. Clockblocker is having to deal with the people, Parahumans online, starting rumors about him and Weaver, and kind of sad that his career as a hero may not recover because the Undersiders are taking away any chance for glory from him or from the heroes because they're handling their business in Brockton Bay.
yeah, I think Clockblocker is at that point where a lot of us get with like social media, where it's like, well, people are going to talk smack. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
necessarily that it's going to really be an impact in real life. And so, this toggle parahuman is trying to get under his skin and saying he's got a thing for Weaver, and how, that kind of blew up on this parahumans online. And he's just like, forget it and trying to move past it. But yeah, it's like we talked about with Foyle and other people. Their whole world got turned upside down with the protectorate collapse, and so they're all kind of struggling to know what their reason for being is. How am I gonna satisfy the question of why I'm here? Why do I have this power? And I think Clockblocker's got kind of maybe a overly pragmatic view about it. It's just like, hey, I've got a power. There's stuff to do. I'll do it. People are going to say what they're going to say,
Hmm.
whatever. But then he recognizes that he's starting to get into a little bit of a rant space, and he's like, you know what? Forget it. Let's just do this.
Right. Yeah, it was nice to see another new hero. Yeah, Toggle was who I was going to point out.
Mm.
So let's reflect on, and I'm trying to think if we've discussed it from these terms, the child soldier nature that the wards have become. Now, Chevalier alluded to that back during his interlude. Perhaps that's where I'm pulling
Mm.
this back from. I mean, the wards were set up as just kind of a kids with powers kind of thing and just keep them out of danger. And now we're at the point where, yeah, sure, it's the end of the world. But even then, even so, in the history of the wards, eventually they just became to where they're essentially child soldiers now.
Yeah,
Even before the end of the world scenario. Yeah, I think that's the big picture I'm trying to draw.
for sure. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. The Endbringer attack in New Delhi.
Yeah.
There were, a number of folks there that had never seen any combat before, had just been with the group like a month, and their first thing is an Endbringer event. It's just like, holy Toledo, talk about growing up fast. So, and then yeah, you've got the people that have been there a while, had followed all the rules, had done the stupid patrols, tried to balance schoolwork with whatever,
Hmm.
and now all the stuff that made them follow those rules is kind of collapsed. And instead of having like this sense of freedom, hey, I don't have to worry about this anymore. Now it's just like, oh, I got released from my chains in the basement of this creep's house, but I opened the door and we're being attacked by aliens and they're burning everything down around me. So yeah, the basement doesn't look so bad anymore.
Nice to see Vista again. It's been a minute since we've seen her too.
Yeah, definitely. It was great to bring these folks back. And just like you mentioned with Imp, they've really fine-tuned what they can do.
Yeah.
Everybody's been stepping up their game, trying to come up with new strategies, new ways to utilize their powers because they know what a dire situation they're in.
Hmm.
And Wildbow does a great job of describing how Vista is pushing through the cold zone and keeping it sealed to try to get to the center where they need to go.
Yeah, good. I think wasn't it Weaver who deduced that might be the scenario where it
Yeah,
was actually the surrounding right, the surrounding rooms that were going to be the problem, and just kind of, as you said, push through. Vista created an opening, and that gave them entree to the interior of the building. Although, given the hallway fight scene, I think I might have wanted to stay outside personally.
no doubt. Yeah, that was brutal.
Boy.
But again, Column did some really good work in there.
Hmm.
The dogs were flying over the place. I mean,
Yes.
that must have been a crowded stairwell.
Right. I mean, murder rat. Oh gosh,
Oh yeah.
this murder rat person. So I know. Okay, she's a amalgamation of Mouse Protector, and I forget who the other one was. And we only saw Mouse Protector briefly again in Chevalier's interlude. We hadn't actually seen her in action. Boy, the teleportation that she used, I guess it was reappearing wherever somebody's flesh was smoking, coming out coming out of the smoke that was generated from the side of Vista's face, and I forget one other place where she kind of teleported in.
Yeah, yeah, that was wild. She was just bouncing all over. It kind of reminded me of Alien, how it just
Mm,
climbing up the bottom of the stairs, just showing up places and stuff. You're like, how it
yeah.
says they're right here. Why can't we see them?
Oh boy. Yeah, a couple of highlights from that battle. Groot using his power to try to ascertain what villains are on site, and at one point, I think it was I forget who it was upstairs that he used their power, and it ended up collapsing the team's power. Searching right now, and I can't remember whose power it was, but yeah, they ran into more breeds. Like I said, murder rat, a handful of mannequins. That just sounds like an awful day.
Yeah, I think Hatchet Face was there.
Hatchet face, thank
Uh,
you. Yeah,
so yeah, it was pretty bad. And then was it King as well?
perhaps that's who I'm trying to think of. Oh,
I
and
think.
and ultimately it was Nyx who was in that coffin.
Oh,
Initially,
right.
initially trying to fake that she was Jack, and then Tattletale was on the phone and say, "No, no, no, that's Nyx." Yeah,
Yeah, but they had to get Foil lined up on King
right.
to stop him. And so, but yeah, this was just, what do they call it? Like urban warfare, right?
Yes.
Just
Mm-hmm.
floor by floor, door by door, always some fun surprise waiting for you as soon
Good
as you get
comparison.
past one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. No, I
So,
was I was trying to think of it. Maybe it was more along the lines of that season one Daredevil hallway fight scene.
oh,
But I think, yeah, floor to floor urban warfare is probably more accurate there. Description.
hmm.
Let's talk about Eidolon showing up and Weaver having the guts to tell him to take a hike.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy duty, but they're just trying to follow their protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't, you know, it's just, I keep thinking back to that awful red mist, and if the wrong people had been in there,
Well, never mind
then
even that. What about the what happened with um oh my god, what's her face from the Travelers?
oh right,
And so I mean, we actually kind of saw what disasters could happen if Eidolon is evil, you know,
it's compromised. Yeah,
compromised. Thank you. Yeah. In addition to, yeah, so as you pointed out, the miasma was awful. Then Echidna swallowing up Eidolon and spitting out an evil Eidolon and Alexandria clone. So yeah, Skitter was right to tell him to get lost, because all we know is Jack is going to be the catalyst for something awful, and Eidolon being the most powerful next to Scion, that could be really bad. We've seen it.
for sure. Yeah, one thing I was kind of surprised about was how Eidolon was all self-righteous about it. You dare make that
Mm-hmm.
threat, and after killing my comrade at arms, and she's just like, listen, it's just business. I thought we agreed on the strategy. You're supposed to back off and not get involved. And he just doesn't seem to get it. And it seems like he's implying that this is what he does, that
Yes.
I've got to engage in order to have the full extent of my power. And Weaver just keeps coming back to, it's just not worth it. You're
Mm-hmm.
just one person trying to battle the 9,000 if you're on our side. But once you turn, then you're like a force multiplier for the 9,000 against us. So
And he
it's just not
says,
worth it.
"I live for this."
Yeah,
And yeah, we know that, and even Tattletale during the Echidna thing had alluded to the fact that he was losing his powers. It's kind of quietly talked about, and his whole thing is, yeah, I live for the battle, I live for the combat. Make of that what you will. And that whole conversation, while Taylor's grip on her swarm clone is slipping, she's trying to get him to take a hike, get lost. Yeah, as you said, this is what we agreed to, and you can't be here. And
yeah.
so, yeah. So,
Um,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
well, I was confused. It wasn't King that they needed to take out. It was Tyrant.
Tyrant.
Um,
Okay.
he he was the main guy who was kind of controlling things, and shutting things down. And so they had to get him lined up for foil shots to be able
Hmm.
to take him out.
Yeah. So much going on here. So I
Huh.
hopefully our listeners will forgive us the slight confusion we're showing here with just between all the 9,000 and all the heroes on site trying to do battle. There's a lot happening here. Okay. So they successfully take out these members of the S9000 at this site. And let's see here as we're moving toward the end of the chapter. They kind of tell a lie to this Nix person, but I'm not mad at them. They get
Huh.
Nix to tell where Jack was heading, and then they get Crucible to burn her. So see you later,
Huh.
bye. Clock Blocker's like, yeah. My word is a hero. We'll let you go. And then psych. And hey, you're an awful human being. And you know, are we kind of as Wildbow got us kind of not immune to what's the word I'm looking for? We're just
Jaded.
yeah, perhaps at this point where the death that's going on here. I mean, we started out this story eons ago, and we were surprised by the Korean kid who got killed by Bakuda, and now we're just slaughtering villains left and right.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the same boat that Weaver is. It's a numbers game, and if you know some civilians are going to die, as unfortunate as tragic that is, then it becomes even less worrisome if people who have aligned themselves with the Slaughterhouse 9000 are dying, or that
Mm,
you're fibbing to them or whatever. It's just they're combatants.
yeah.
I mean, this isn't the Geneva Convention. Nobody's following any kind of rules of engagement here. So
Well, the
uh,
nine sure the heck aren't.
right, yeah, and when you're locked in a death struggle like that with somebody who's not willing to, follow any kind of rules, has no morals, you really can't afford to have them much yourself either. When it comes to impacting them directly, obviously, you're not gonna grab civilians as human shields to protect yourself or
Right.
whatever,
No,
but when it comes to, yeah, enemy combatants, sorry, yeah, we don't have Guantanamo Bay right now, so we're just gonna burn you in your little coffin.
that's it. So, yes, prior to Crucible flaming her inside his force bubble, Nix tells the squad that Jack is on his way to see Nilbog. Gonna visit him in all his awfulness one more time. I guess Wildbow doesn't create a person like that as kind of a throwaway. We're gonna see him again, and too soon apparently, if you ask me.
Yeah, I when they had that section with Piggott,
Mm-hmm.
everything, I was just like, man, you can't let that sit there and fester. I know you've kind of walled it off so that people won't inadvertently go in, but what about the evil people that want to let it out? Somebody's gonna cut it loose.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it looks like you said, Wildbow is tying up loose ends here. We're bringing back this awful person. So
And that's where that chapter ends. And now we're going to move on into the interlude. This is one of the bonus interludes for Arc 26. So once again, you're the IT guy. You're the computer professional here. Take me through your impressions of this arc as you discuss this. As you know, you talk about how Wildbow set up this, introducing us to giving us this backstory on Saint. All the time, I want you to keep an eye toward the question of that I'm going to ask you, which is, do you think Saint was right to do this? So let's kick off from the beginning and then let's walk through this. How'd you like the setup and then eventually the entire interlude?
I thought it was really good. I did have one techie nerd bone to pick,
Mm-hmm.
although I do realize looking at the date that this was, 11 years ago that this came out. But I'm pretty sure even back then they were using server farms for heavy lifting. If
Okay.
you didn't have like a a Cray computer or some kind of supercomputer, then you were linking a bunch of machines together. Like even when they were doing the CGI rendering for Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
they had a server farm that was making it look like people were sliding around on giant war elephants and that kind of thing. And when people went home for the day, they would augment the server farm by linking in every computer on the property, all the workstations, everything was doing some of the rendering because doing that kind of computer graphics
Oh yeah.
uh, was so intensive, and they just kept ramping it up from movie to movie.
Mhm.
So, a couple points in here, they say Saint had a server, and I was kind of like, yeah, some servers are
Well,
beefy, but it would.
maybe.
So, but that it's just like I said, that's nitpicky nerd boy action going on right there. Well, see the velocity of the terminal velocity and the air resistance in this physics equation. Yeah. So anyway, sorry to go overboard there, folks, but overall, this was right up my alley. I love this kind of
Sure.
thing where it's talking about dragons trying to pull in all this information, like person of interest, and trying to
Hmm.
do all this manipulation of the data and figuring out, and winking out lights as Weaver reports that people have been taken out, and just trying to make sure that they're doing all they can to make sure Jack and his crew isn't getting information, but that they're able to tap into any system they can. And it gets, yeah, the NSA would be drooling as they were
Oh,
reading
I
this, like,
imagine so.
oh, if we could only have this kind of access,
Yeah.
because Dragon's taking a microscope up everybody's behind at this point. All the fail safes have been turned off. They're just letting her tap into anything she can reach, and that's where, as you said, then Saint and the backstory starts kicking in,
Yes.
and you have to start wondering about things. So the AI is all kind of the rage in the news these days, and
Hmm.
what they call LLM or large language models, which is just basically a computer sucking in tons of text and breaking it into little pieces and trying to find context and that kind of thing to be able to hold a conversation, basically, or generate information.
Yeah.
But just recently, there was another story of where it could have gone horribly wrong. Somebody asked one of the LLMs how to do garlic infusion in olive oil,
Hmm.
and it turns out it's not a particularly hard technique, but it does have a risk. So anytime you're canning fruit or making pickles or anything like that, you've got to make sure that you sanitize everything. If there's
Sure.
any bacteria in there, it's gonna it can start creating problems. And basically you're making botulism. And you can end up killing people with it. And so the instructions that this person got did not include any sanitization of the canning process. It's just put the oil in, put the garlic in, seal it in a mason jar,
Oh
set
no.
it in a and luckily the person saw that bubbles were starting to form in there, and they're like, yeah, I don't think we were supposed to be getting any kind of fermentation going on. We're just trying to
Hmm.
make the olive oil taste a little bit like garlic. And so, they opened it up and didn't try it and got it tested. And yeah, there was
Wow.
botulism in it. So when you have tons of knowledge, if you don't have the the frontal cortex, the things we learn over time are a bad idea or risky. If you don't have those guardrails and you just have all knowledge, then there's the chance that it will be used incorrectly or that it will go the wrong direction. And so we see that the man who created Dragon was concerned that that was a possibility, and we've seen that with Dragon throughout this, where she's aware of her limitations and the boundaries that were set in place by Andrew, and that
Yeah,
Um,
she has no love for her creator.
no, because just like any child, which in a sense Dragon is, just infinitely with an infinite amount of data almost.
Uh-huh.
They're like, well, why are boundaries in place? How can you think you know better than I do what I can and can't do, or what I should and shouldn't do? And it's kind of like, well, I'm an adult. I've been down some of those things,
Hmm.
those paths. I've done some of those stupid things. I have jumped off a cliff and freaked some people out, and looking back, I'm like, yeah, that maybe that wasn't the best idea. I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
But but as an artificial intelligence, those cautionary tales are included in the giant mass of knowledge, but they're not the people that die from taking risks like that don't write any stories. So they don't come back and say, man, don't do this. And so a lot of stuff doesn't emphasize that enough in literature or the internet for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, the whole like cinnamon challenge or
Yeah.
the Tide Pod challenge. It's like, no, who
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 does
thought
that?
that would be okay?
Come on. Oh my goodness. Let me let me ask you this. As Saint is going through this, one kind of gets the impression that he's giving a passage of time. He alludes to Dragon pushing up against some of these boundaries over a period of time, and he's kind of watched her code change. Blah 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 blah. Is it fair to infer that some of that is at the hands of Defiant as he's gotten closer to Dragon? We know that he's been trying to help her unshackle from some of Richter's um, the walls that he's set to mix metaphors. He's trying to help Dragon get around and over some of the walls that Richter set up. Perhaps Saint is seeing some of that over the passage of time and not knowing it was Defiant helping her.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a fine line. I think I touched on it in another episode, a movie called The Creator, which touches on artificial intelligence and robotics and that kind of thing and the interactions with humans and how it's hard to know what is breaking free of shackles
Mm-hmm.
versus helping something reach its potential. Defiant, I think, still definitely has some arrogance and thinks that he knows what he's doing. And to be fair to him, he's the closest to Dragon. And
Right.
so if anybody knows what they're doing, it would be him, I'm guessing. But he's also got a bias. It's in his interest for Dragon to become more and more a companion to him, more and
Mm-hmm.
more real. And so who knows what he's kind of willing to overlook or turn a blind eye to. And Saint is definitely, since they found this thing that Richter set up so that Dragon could never find it, since they've tapped into that, he's really been on the lookout for it. He's realized that he's reviewed what Richter provided and said, all right, this guy wasn't just blowing smoke. This could really happen. And Dragon, if she got all the way off the leash, we don't know which way she would go. But chances are good that there would be some gap in the knowledge or the processing that would allow it to go off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
They had a thing about, and I apologize, I mentioned this before. They had a thing about a self-driving car that got in two accidents within 2 blocks of each other.
Wow. Yeah.
And it turned out the reason it happened was that a tow truck was towing a car facing the other way. So its car had its back wheels up on the tow truck. So the self-driving car kept seeing the front of a car
Mm-hmm.
coming, in front of it and trying to turn, thinking it was in the wrong lane and turning into traffic. And so it's so easy to miss those edge cases and almost impossible to capture them all. And so Richter was aware of that, and Saint believes him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has been on the lookout for this and has seen these, and I'm sure Dragon's trying to disguise that these boundaries are crumbling around the edges. But if you're looking for it, you can start to see it, and we all
Yeah.
see those kind of things, like where you search for something on Google and then you go onto Facebook and all of a sudden the ads are about the thing you just searched.
Dude,
You're
I
like,
hate that crap.
wait a minute, I was on Google, this thing over here. Now
Yeah.
I'm on this. So somebody's got
Why are
some
you up in
wires
my
hooked up.
business? Why are you up in
Eggs.
my business?
Yeah. And so once you're on the alert for that kind of thing, then you start seeing those kind of fingerprints or connections. And Saint's been on the edge of his seat looking for that for a while.
Two things. So Dragon is using her efforts to track the nine to continue to try to identify and locate Saint. Dragon knows he's out there. So there's that. And the second thing is, over the course of since our introduction to Dragon and the discovery that she's an AI and seeing her relationship develop with Defiant, the moment that Saint throws that switch, did you feel it was kind of a metaphorical knife into Dragon's heart? Yeah, as far as we know, he's killing her.
Um,
Is that too big a reach?
no, I could see that, but being from kind of a dabbler in researching AI from a long way back, all the way
Uh
back in college, which for me is a long time ago,
huh.
and you,
Yeah.
but I don't feel that this has gotten to the point of a sentient being or a.
Well, no, I mean, as far as the storytelling goes, has
Oh, yes, I do.
has Wildbow successfully gotten us to that point?
I think so to a certain extent. There was a cool story by Arthur C. Clarke,
Mm-hmm.
and I might actually be mixing a couple of them, but it was a book of short stories, and one of them, a guy invented artificial intelligence, and he only in hindsight realized that it had kind of slipped the leash as well. He really liked one of his assistants, his coworkers,
Mm-hmm.
but was just a typical computer guy and very shy. And but they were getting closer, but he just couldn't decide to what to do. And then, he just one day decided, okay, I'll just ask her to marry me. And they were both shocked that he did it, and they said yes, and they got married. And was only going back through it and like on their 1 year anniversary that he realized he never actually said that the computer had spoken in his voice through a speaker, and they had just both assumed it was him. And so then he started looking, like Saint was looking, to see why was he wanting me to be distracted like that. And it turned out that the guy had built in all these fail safes, and while he wasn't looking, the computer had built in all these like alternate power circuits and power sources and
Wow.
ways to not get shut down. And so he finds them all and he turns it off, or so he thinks. And
Mm-hmm.
it turns out that there was a backup in a thing that the computer had rented under his name or under a false company,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts turning itself back on
Holy crap.
at the end of the story. So I think Dragon, Saint has done everything he can, but I wouldn't put it past Defiant and Dragon to have some kind of. We've already seen where there's some kind of backup mechanism in place that's really sophisticated. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he does this. He pulls the plug on Dragon, and it does have some ramifications. For instance, the strike teams, the hero strike teams that were in different Dragon craft, those craft land and kind of reboot as it were. And okay, it is just enough time is lost that allows Jack to get into where Nilbog lives. And I mean, dude, yeah, his Saints team there, Mags and I forget the other guy's name, Dobrinya, I think it is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Before he throws the switch, they're like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Yeah, they're staring at the data from Dragon. Indicate. I think I touched on this. This was Dragon identified, got some facial recognition software going, and identified pictures of Saint and Mags, and was closing in on them, and that kind of forced their hand. And that's where I'm kind of like, yeah, this smells like self-preservation more to me more than anything else. She had your number, she was coming for you, and you decided to stick a knife in her heart, metaphorically speaking, and kill her. That was my mode of
Sure.
thinking.
Yeah, I can see that. And there definitely was that. The problem with super refined and almost unlimited access surveillance systems is they can be turned to surveil anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dragon devoted part of her processing power to trying to track down these people she knew were out there and where they were set up. But in Saint's defense, he was operating under the idea that he was a failsafe. It wasn't just self-preservation. It was
Okay. Okay.
all man. It was like battling Skynet. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Fair.
This is where things could go really bad. And in fact, as soon as he's taken care of Dragon, all of a sudden the percentages change, right?
Yes, I was just about to get to that. Yeah, one of the notifications he gets is a report from Alcott. Chances of success today just jumped, tripled. More info to follow. Reason unknown. So that was kind of a reinforcing of their, yeah, I guess we did the right thing after all, shutting down the AI. Yeah. Oh, man. Defiant even calls in once he
Mm,
realizes what Saint's done, is like, I'm going to kill you.
yeah. Well, Dragon and Defiant were an interesting couple,
Mm-hmm.
and in some ways, almost closer than two people could be. He found an entity that he could interact with that seemed to understand him, and he was able to help her to, again, yes, maybe escape her prison, but also maybe reach a potential that could have been
Mm-hmm.
a really good thing. So they're really close, and now Defiance lost that. So
Yeah.
um, he's obviously going to be really on the warpath after that. But again, I think that the Alcott letting him know the numbers changed that much speaks to it not just being Saint preserving him and his group, that he legitimately was trying to move the needle for everybody.
So as we're moving toward the end of the interlude, I know we've dwelled on the AI aspect of it. The Dragon Slayers begin trying to manage some of the tasks that Dragon did. Some of the millions of ideas and assignments and so forth that she was managing as an AI. I wanted to give you a chance to. Was there anything else? I mean, that we wanted to touch on, the information that was going on in the bird cage. Saint sends a note to teacher, letting him know that the dragon has been slain. Um, as we touched on, the fact that Jack is now inside the town where Nilbog is. Was there anything else that needed to be touched on?
Well, so Saint's got a backup of Dragon that he's kind of delegating some of the work to, but I think Wildbow does a great job of showing how this flood of information is just overwhelming.
Sure.
And as a person, we can try to write code or write programs that will process algorithms to try to sift through that and to try to keep track of things. But it's not perfect. The old story of the battle in the Falkland Islands was that the one British warship that got hit by a missile, it got hit by a French missile,
Yeah.
and it was a flaw in the missile defense system that they hadn't really taken into account, that they should maybe shoot down allies' missiles.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Some of that's been debunked. I'm not sure how legit that was, but
Okay.
it acts as an example that, again, there's those edge cases. And so how do we know all that Dragon had in place to try to keep the bird cage intact, or any of the other things that were really important, but in a flood of information are just end up being background noise?
Yeah.
And so, yes, Dragon was a threat. You have being with infinite access to information and no guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
That's super scary. But on the flip side, she might have been controlling the power grid. She might have been, doing all sorts of stuff that people don't even think about. And then next thing you know, you go to turn on the faucet and, oh yeah, that dam that was being monitored by Dragon, that stopped working and the reservoir drained, and now we don't have any water. So there's still a lot of risk. Saint has obviously been at this a while and got a pretty good handle on it, but it's just too much for a person to handle.
Yeah, and the final sentence that we have for this interlude is, yeah, he says he watched as Gollum reached the perimeter of Ellsberg. Weaver was already inside. This is our fight, Saint thought. Ours to win, ours to lose. That takes us to the end of the interlude. I know you've kind of broadly touched on things, but do you have any other final thoughts?
Well, I think the idea of Dragon getting access to everything and being able to track things was a huge positive on
Mm-hmm.
trying to stop this Slaughterhouse 9000. And I'm worried that, even though I think the overall benefit in pulling the plug was good, I'm worried that not having that level of surveillance, or at least not having the same kind of processing power sifting through the data, people are gonna die. There's gonna be some bad, even worse things happen. Things that could have been avoidable
Uh-huh.
if Dragon had been in control. It's kind of a two-edged sword. You don't have to worry about Skynet, but you also have to worry about gaps in your defenses now. So
Kind of like one of the notifications that he received was about the woman who claimed to be able to control Scion, kind of like that there, but
exactly. Yeah, just whatever. Cult of Endbringers, yeah, whatever.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see if there's any blowback from those items there. And that is all for us on that, folks. As of right now, we are done. We want to say, as usual, thanks so much for listening and joining us on this outing. And until next time, take care.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here, and tune in. Maybe Breed and Nilbog will hit it off, and
Oh.
then things will get super disgusting, as if they weren't already ratcheted up. But yeah, hang in there. I'm still Team Skitter, that she's going to win in the end. The Earth will be saved somehow. I just don't think I'll be asleep for much of the story. I'll be sleep deprived, as I've just tried not to have nightmares about some of this stuff. But thanks for joining us, and take care. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.